Hello, welcome back to the JustBeCos Podcast, a podcast about all things life and cosplay. Yes, thank you for coming back and showing up to support your boy, doing this all by his lonesome. But today, we've got another very special guest who's going to tell us about something on the other side of the country. Now, you might have seen them. They're hosting their own convention. They've got a room that is the best bloody room I've ever seen, full of Pokemon paraphernalia everywhere. They're a cosplayer. They're a CEO in their own right for this convention, and they've been told to do a very good job representing themselves today, and I'm sure they're going to do great. Everybody, please make welcome, and thank you for showing us all about Pixel Pop today. Tim, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Now, Tim, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Tim, president of Pixel Expo, WA's largest gaming and animation expo. I've been a cosplayer for 15 years this June, which is a special anniversary coming up for Supernova. I've been with Pixel Expo since 2014, day one, when we launched the organization. I've been with them pretty much ever since in various roles. And at the moment, working on the board as president and have been for the last 3 years.
How has that been? Because we know it's one thing to attend a con. We've talked to someone what it's like to kind of step into the role of someone who helps manage it and run it, but you've kind of been there since day one, and you've been with the community, and you've climbed the ranks. How's it been, like, being there since day one and watching this, I guess, this project or this baby of yours kind of grow up and evolve? What's that been like?
Oh, genuinely, it's absolutely unbelievable how much it's grown, and like there are times where I still don't believe how much it's grown. So we've started obviously as an idea in 2014 outside of a food truck in the city, being like, what if we did our own convention? What doesn't exist in Perth? Gaming and animation. And this was a time when conventions in Perth were few and far between. I think we just had Supernova, and it wasn't, fancy Supernova in the Perth Convention Center. It was Supernova at the Claremont Showgrounds, which, if you know where that is, it's very much lives up to its name of like being in a literal supernova. It was so hot with no air conditioning. So we have come a long way since that initial conception to, we've had 5,000 people come through the doors last year, which is something, we never even dreamed of. We thought we'd have a couple of vendors and a couple of artists, and here we are. So yeah, it's been unreal.
That's fantastic. Now, with yourself as a cosplayer who's been in the scene for such a long time, was that something that you always saw yourself doing? Like, oh, I want to run a convention because there's nothing here? Or did you kind of just see it as something that was an idea between friends that kind of just grew into something?
It was definitely something that I saw, I guess, an opportunity for in the market. Being a cosplayer since 2009, I've seen a lot of things through the cosplay community, both good and bad. And to be able to then provide an opportunity for the newer cosplayers now to have something that they can call home in their convention, that they can meet friends and meet their, potentially loved ones or whoever has to be, meet their community members, is just something that's so awesome and such a great opportunity for us to be able to do. So it's really cool to see that from, my original inception and falling into this role, transitioning from cosplayer to convention runner is just really, really cool.
That's really nice. So you've done the travels around, obviously, to other parts of Australia, maybe Melbourne or Sydney in some capacity, checked out some conventions there. Have there only been any conventions in particular that you've seen that you really liked, that you think, oh yeah, let's take this idea, let's model parts of our convention after that? Is that kind of what you've done in terms of research, or...?
That's a really good question, and it's something that I take quite seriously. So I try and travel to as many conventions around Australia as I can, not just within the community that we have here in Perth, which is awesome, but traveling over east for PAX. I recently returned from DreamHack as well, and trying to take on some of their ideas and their feedback, working with the team at ESL to try and incorporate things that they're doing really well over in Melbourne, here in Perth. Because a lot of people in Perth can't either afford to travel all the way over to Melbourne or Sydney, or they never even dream about doing that. They're just happy with what's happening in Perth, and there's a whole different ball game happening over east that we're trying to bring that little bit of, I guess, a slice of back to Perth.
Yeah.
Trying to incorporate.
That's really nice, because I've honestly, personally, I've never been to Perth. I've got a few friends I know in Perth.
Nobody has.
But I only know them because, like you mentioned, they've managed to make the trip over to the East Coast and to the bigger conventions. But they always say, it's like, oh, come and visit Perth sometime. And, there's always a plan to. But for something like Pixel Pop, which just through the grapevine, we hear bits and pieces about saying, if you come to Perth for a convention, do Pixel Pop. That's the one to visit. What would you say for someone like myself, never been to Perth, never been to Pixel Pop, what would be the draw? What makes it unique? What makes it a little bit different to any other convention that you have visited so far?
I think for us, our biggest draw is our activation space. So it's something that we're really passionate about, is that we want to create an event that is different from anything you can experience in Australia, which is a very easy thing to say because I think a lot of conventions try to diversify their content. But within Perth and with other conventions around Australia, it's very much here is the blueprint of what makes a great expo or convention. And we will put that into a building and you will go and have fun because you've paid your ticket price. Where we look at the ticket price that we set and we say, right, what are you getting for that $55 or that $45 or whatever happens to be the price? When you walk in those doors, are you getting a free meet and greet with the guest that's come over from overseas? Are you getting free access to all the tournaments that are happening on the weekend? Are you getting free access to the cosplay competition? Is the cosplay competition accessible? All of these different things, and we want people to be able to do things. I want people to leave our show feeling like they didn't get a chance to do everything because there was so much on.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to bring with our event. It's not just a place where you can go to buy anime or video game merch. It's not just a place that you can go to stand around and cosplay. Like, we want there to be major cosplay events. We want there to be major drive and reason and passion from the community pouring into our event to make it seem more alive, which is our main bread and butter.
That's really, really cool to hear. What are some of the things that you can expect to see there? We'll get into kind of, bits and pieces of, tickets and guests and stuff like that later. But what are some of the things that, you can expect to see at Pixel Pop, either from past years and say, hey, wow, this is like a Pixel Pop tradition. We do these kinds of things. And what are some things that you've kind of learnt throughout the years and say, oh, we're going to try and introduce that this year in 2024? What are some of those activities?
For sure. So at Pixel, we try and do, like we said, a lot more, I guess, interactive things to do. So one of the things that we do year on year as a game developer space, which isn't a new concept, but it's just grown exponentially from our first year where we had, I think, 6 or 7 game developers. And this year we have 40, and they're coming from all across the world, not just Australia and Perth. They're coming from South Korea. They're coming from Africa. They're coming from the UK. We've got this massive reach of people that are coming in because they've heard of our event and they want to be a part of it, which is massive. We have our cosplay championships, which we have the biggest theater in WA, which is also accessible. So our cosplayers that have mobility devices or massive builds or are in a wheelchair have the access to go onto the stage and actually be part of the festivities, which not a lot of events have the opportunity to do. We have our fighting game tournaments and our esports tournaments. So that's something that we carry on year and grow bigger and bigger as the demand gets. We have a dedicated TCG and board game and D&D space where we have people from the community that come back every year and put on D&D one-shots or board game learn how to play sessions or Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments or Pokemon tournaments. A massive amount of things just to do at the convention that we build on every single year.
That's really, wow. That's so much. That sounds like it's almost going to rival PAX at this point with how many things you guys have got going on.
We do internally call ourselves PAX from Wish. So we're getting there.
It's PAX from Perth. That's what it's going to be at some stage.
PAX from Perth.
PAX from Perth.
I like that.
Now, you yourself, you've been a cosplayer for 15 years. You've seen everything that there probably is to see within Australia around the scene. What are some things that you can say, yeah, this part of Pixel Pop, that was me. I did that. That was my idea. What are some things that you can kind of take ownership from, you reckon?
Ooh, tough question because I know my team will listen to this interview. I have a bit of a infamous role in being the ideas person. What that means, the ideas person, yeah. So what that means is that I have a lot of what I think are great ideas, which then I pitch to the team and I'm then explained to why they're dreadful ideas.
Right.
So I've had a lot of those, and not dreadful because they're not great ideas, but dreadful because how are we going to do that, Tim? How are we going to fit a 15-foot or a 50-foot tall inflatable version of our mascot into the pavilions and also fit all the vendors? How are we going to have fire inside of a closed building, which we did do.
Ooh.
Intentional fire, which we only did once, which was very stressful. like all of these big ideas. But I guess something that we've done that I guess can take a little bit of credit for is the development of the traders and the vendors and the people that come to the show to display their businesses, and the link that we have with the community. We don't just place an application online and say apply for booths or tables or artist alley or whatever it is. We have that as well, but we have an affiliates program, so we reach out to community events. I remember just after COVID going and meeting with the presidents of anime clubs at universities, or non-for-profits around Perth that have the same values and core interests that we do, and say, hey, we're starting this thing. Do you want to be a part of it? We'd love to have you as part of our show, so your community gets more reach within ours and vice versa. So we give that opportunity for those like-minded affiliates, and our program is now getting bigger to try and support those, I guess, smaller events to have something in common that we all work towards to help build the community.
That's really nice. So it's like you're saying, look, you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours, and everyone gets a back scratch by the end of this. And
everyone's backs are scratched.
That's fantastic. I love that. Who's like, by the sounds of it too, it's such a community-driven, community-involved event. Did that come out of anywhere in particular, or did you think, look, we want to put something that the community in Perth can enjoy more than, I guess, our profits, I guess, at this point? Was that always like a core theme or a core, mantra for Pixel Pop as an organisation?
Community is always first for us, and I know there are a lot of events out there that are saying the same thing, which is awesome. We have huge amount of events across Australia that are run by big corporations right down to little tiny single person operations. For Pixel, like, we are community based. We are all non-for-profit, we are all volunteers, no one on our team gets paid. We all have full-time jobs that we work, and then a lot of our team will jump online when they finish work, they get home, they come on Discord, and we talk shop about how we can make our show better. And that's not something that happens once a fortnight or once a week. It's almost every single day that we meet. And we're all friends. We're all sort of in the foxhole together, trying to make the show bigger and better each time.
That's really, really cool. So is this something, and for anyone who doesn't know, who hasn't organised an event before or doesn't really understand what kind of goes behind the planning in something like this, how long or how much time during the year are you guys talking and planning and getting set up for the Pixel Pop the very next year? So say Pixel Pop finishes one weekend in I think it's September this year.
Yep, September 28th, 29th.
So October 1, from then onwards, you might have a week break or something. But when do you guys feel like, all right, let's come together and start discussing, what did we do well, what didn't we do well? When do you actually start planning for an event like this?
So for us, the day after Pixel Expo is the day that we start planning the next one. Wow. We review feedback, we put the format straight away. Like, we want that feedback in the moment, because we don't want people to dwell on it too much and have their opinion change. You want to try and capture that lightning in the bottle, and that's how you get really proper, honest feedback, is to try and get it in the moment. And then outside of that, when we actually start, like, we've already booked dates for 2025. Like, we start planning up to 2 years in advance to think, okay, what are our budgets going to look like? What are our projections going to look like? What can we do different? And that's what we try and do every year, is that we try and change up everything we do, from layouts to graphics to who's at the convention to what times we open. Like, everything seems very, very different each year. And that's a combination of getting really valuable feedback from our community, which we then adapt and change our event to suit. But also trying to keep it fresh and exciting, and almost keep our fans guessing, like, oh, what's Pixel going to do next,
That's a really nice notion to have, because I'm going to throw shade, or don't throw shade, take whatever way you will, but you go to something like a Supernova or an Oz Comic Con, it's almost predictable in the way it's set up. It's at a similar location, similar, setup, similar time, similar vendors. The only thing that might change is, like, oh, we got this movie star coming in, or we got this person coming in. That's probably the most change that you'll ever see. It's the same activities, the same vendors. So having something where you're, eagerly striving to make it overly different, I think that's a nice thing to kind of think about each year. Just on feedback, and if you're able to share any stories, what is some of, like, wow, that is such lovely feedback. I can't believe someone thought that highly of us, or, ooh, that stung. We're definitely going to fix that up. Have you any kind of feedback that sticks out to you that you can remember?
I take all of the feedback on very, not personally, because that makes it sound like I'm upset by it, but I take it all very seriously. So whether it's positive or whether it's constructive or whether it's, or negative, which we've definitely had in the past, and that's totally fine. because it helps us identify areas within the expo that need improvement. We still get some that come through that I'm like, oh, that's not really helpful. We did have a person say that there wasn't enough pixel art at the Pixel Expo. Which I thought was a very specific thing, but I think judging from the rest of his feedback, I think he thought that it was an event for pixel art.
Right.
Which then tells me that it's a marketing issue, that, okay, we're maybe marketing the pixel aspect of this too broad. We need to really focus in on the gaming and animation side of things. We had feedback after our first show that said, this is, the best show that we've ever been to, or, if you keep going like this, you're going to be rivaling Supernova and Oz Comic Con. And we're like, oh, geez, okay. We just wanted to have a good time with our community without looking to compete, and that's something that we still hold on to today. We don't try and compete with anyone. We work with all the conventions in Perth to make sure that our dates don't cross over and that we're far enough apart from each other, to make sure that the community isn't having to choose between going to a HoshiCon or a Tokyo Alley or a Pixel Expo. Like, they have the opportunity to go to all of them because they're spread out and to support us just as we try to support them.
That's really, really very thoughtful of you. That's very thoughtful of you. It's very inclusive. It's great. Now, just with Pixel Expo, by the name suggests, it sounds like when it first started, 2014, probably the focus might have been on like gaming. Was that the case, and did it kind of expand over the years, or did you always try to include a bit of everything, or did it really depend on the feedback that you got?
I think it's just evolved as the years have developed. So in 2014, we just lost Perth's major anime convention. So the intention was for Pixel Expo to be more of an animation expo, because we wanted to expand on what the previous anime convention had done, but try and include all forms of animation media, whether it's Western or Japanese or wherever it's coming from. And then we sort of tacked on games at the end because we were dabbling with that in the anime convention side of things before that went under. So I guess it sort of evolved from that space.
Interesting. And what would you say, for yourself personally, is your favourite part? Just by the way that you're dressed and the way the room looks, you seem like the gaming kind of dude, but I could be wrong. So what's like your own personal thing that you like going to cons for yourself?
For me, going to cons as, and I think this is true with anyone that now moves into the running of convention space, is that it's not that they've run out of things to do at conventions, it's that they actively start looking at things that they can take home with them. So for me, going to conventions, I still love cosplaying and going to events with my friends and having group photos and all that, but I've always got sort of one eye on, okay, what's the layout like? How's the flow of traffic going? What are they doing in the venue space that we're also using, and how can we adapt that to our con? Is that working? Is that exit over there? So I'm constantly thinking, and I try and encourage the team to do the same, which they begrudge me because they're there to have fun, and my idea of fun is doing research. So it's different now. For me, it's all about going and seeing, oh, that's a sick idea, or why have they done that? That's a really interesting choice. Or, oh, that's really cool. I never would have thought of that. How can I bring that home to Perth?
Just for yourself, as someone who is helping run a convention, it's not something that you thought, wow, this is what I want to do when I finish school. I want to start running an organization and making events. And obviously, by the sounds of it and just the pure passion behind what you do, is you generally quite enjoy, organizing something like this and watching all these minds come together and collaborate and watching this event come to life and just improving on it year by year. Is that something that you feel is something that you kind of developed a love for, or is it something that you feel like, hey, I just always wanted to be in charge of something, or I just want to run something, or do you think it's something that you've grown into and kind of learnt to love rather than something that's always been there?
It's another tough question, and it's definitely something that you learn to love. And I came into this thinking that I loved the position that I was in, and I came on board as the original president of Pixel.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm ready to, like you said, be in charge and lead a team and do all these things. And then growing in the last 10 years. It's 10-year anniversary this year. Terrifying.
Happy anniversary. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I haven't thought about that. So being able to see the growth from there and having COVID in the middle and seeing how we've been able to adapt, and this is going to sound crazy, but the best thing that happened to us was COVID, because we were not struggling, but we were very slowly fundraising for Pixel. So all of its crowdfunded, everything we pay for has been supported by the community that buys tickets. We used to run quiz nights and fighting game tournaments and League of Legends watch parties at Hoyt Cinemas and all of these like quirky bar events to try and charge $10 admission here and there, come play a quiz night, have prizes sponsored by local businesses to try and get the capital to get the deposit for the venue.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden all the events went away, and then there was a thirst for them, and we were like, this is the chance for us to take a risk. And the first Pixel Expo, we didn't have the capital to pay for everything outright. We were chasing our own tail essentially. And then when the ticket sales came through, it gave us enough revenue, or surplus, I should say, because we're not for profit.
Yeah.
Gave us enough surplus to then find financial stability. So it's crazy.
All right, so
and that's what happens with that growth, that growth of changing from president in 2014 to 2024. Like, that's the mindset change that I've had. It's not about leading a team and having, being in charge. It's about how do we make sure that this event stays around so the community can continue to enjoy it.
Yeah. Do you feel like, going from, because obviously as a cosplayer, you understand what it's like to, hey, that's the costume I want to make. I've got a group planned with some friends, and that's the goal I'm setting for myself. But obviously, instead of doing things like myself being stupid and going for competitions year after year after year just for cosplay, you obviously decided to, like, no, my goal is to make this event and make it as successful as it can possibly be. Do you feel like aiming for a goal like that instead of something where it's just purely for yourself, or for your own personal dream, and that's not an issue for any competitive cosplayers out there, because again, I did that myself, but for yourself, aiming for a goal with a team of people, with a bunch of your good friends, trying to make something that's obviously bigger than all of you, do you feel like that has made it, I don't know, is that like a passion that you feel like you've just discovered in itself? Again, because, it's not something that you come out of, you finish university thinking, my job or my goal is to make my own convention one day. And I'm sure there's people like that. But do you feel like for yourself, that's something you just stumbled onto by accident? And, for anyone who wants to get into that event, creation space, do you feel like a convention space is a good place to start?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And you're exactly right. Like, I went into university thinking I was going to be an architect, and here I am 15 years later, I'm an occupational therapist. And I run an expo. So I had, no aspirations to run a convention. And I remember going to one of my first conventions and seeing the president of that convention, whose name is Wade, who's our secretary and operations coordinator, and he'd be furious if I name dropped him. I'm doing it. He was their president at the time in 2010, I think it was. I remember watching him do the opening ceremony speech, and I was like, there are people that put this thing together, because I'm a 18-year-old stupid kid.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on. All the stuff has magically appeared at this event, and it's an interest that I have. This is great. And I remember seeing him giving his speech and being like, this is what I want to do with the time that I have. Not knowing it was a volunteer's position, but that inspired me to want to get on board. And when I talked to Wade about it, he's like, I don't even remember what I said. So obviously for him, it was just another day at work. But it's enabled us to have things within our committee, like the shadow executive team. So we have a program where people who are young, say 17, 18, 19, 20, that want to get into the event running space, we have positions on our team called shadow positions, where they can shadow the president or the treasurer or the secretary or the vice president around to learn their role, to create a consistency of power, I guess, as the convention evolves and people step away and people step into new positions. So there's no pressure from them. They don't feel like, oh my God, I've just been dumped to the presidency of this massive, $250,000 or $300,000 a year turnover show. What do? I'm just a kid. We have an ability for me to upskill that person and say, this is a no commitment from your point of view. Tag along, follow me in meetings, listen to listen to what I say, ask questions, get involved. And if you need to step away because it becomes too much, there's no consequences with that. That's totally fine. But it gives them an opportunity to see what it's like and the reality of running an expo, which is tough work.
Yeah, that's really nice. It sounds like you guys have got not only just something that you enjoy personally and with your friends as like a personal project, but it's obviously grown to the size now in which you can bring on outside interests to people who want to kind of learn the ropes purely because they're genuinely interested in it, rather than we're going to promise you this much pay, or we're going to promise you this much power, but it's just something like, hey, look, if you want to learn what we do because it's something that you're interested in, you can take this experience and use it for yourself in whatever career you're pursuing yourself as well. So
Sure.
That's really cool that you've got that kind of opportunity available to people to kind of learn those things.
Thank you.
Now, turning the conversation just a slightly different direction, just on the cosplay side of things. You're a cosplayer.
Awesome.
You know what goes into costumes. What
Oh
is
yeah.
there for cosplayers at something like Pixel Expo? You mentioned you've got, events, you've got competitions. What's going on at Pixel Expo for cosplayers?
Great question. So we have a very sizable team dedicated to cosplay and the theater itself. The theater is a huge chunk of our budget, so we try and put a lot of resources in there to make sure we maximize our minutes in that space. So we have our cosplay parade, which is an event for people of all skills, ages, backgrounds, whatever you have, to walk across that 2,500 seat theater, sorry, and strut their stuff, show off their costume, have their time on. We have little certificates at the end to say that they participated. Nice little like keepsake for them. That happens on our Saturday. We have our cosplay championships. If anyone's seen any of the posting online, they probably have worked out that I'm a massive wrestling fan. So we have our Pixel Cosplay Championship belt, which is like a big wrestling
Wow,
themed
that's cool.
belt that we present to the winner, and it becomes like a legacy thing. And then the winner of our championships gets the opportunity to judge the following year to sort of pass on that title and continue that legacy. We have Iron Cosplay that we're potentially launching this year, which is a 60-minute build something within a set amount of materials and set amount of time on stage with, I think we might be potentially getting Captain Patchett involved with that. We've got cosplay photography. We've got our guest Taryn Cosplay that's coming in from Italy, one of the biggest cosplayers in the world, that's coming to little old Perth, which is
cool.
extremely exciting. So he'll be running panels, he'll be doing meet and greets, photos, all kinds of stuff all weekend, and judging our cosplay competition. So lots and lots of exciting things for cosplayers. We've got photography, we've got workshops, we've got you name it. If you've seen it at an event, we're trying to incorporate cosplay in some way. And I think from our demographics, about 60% of the people that attend Pixel Expo cosplay to our event. So it's a very cosplay heavy event for something that's seen, I guess, as a very gaming event.
Yeah.
But heaps of people turn up in cosplay.
That's really cool. It's obvious, well, I don't think you need to, or I don't think I need to explain the passion behind cosplay and why we do it. I think anybody listening in today knows exactly what we're talking about. We don't need to tell you why we do it. It's just something that we love. But in an event like this too, you mentioned you got Taryn coming from overseas. Is that someone that you guys reached out to say, hey, we'd love for you to join? Or did he reach out to you saying like, hey, like I'm thinking about going to that side of the world? How did that collaboration come about?
So I think we had a few guests that we contacted. I think one of them that got in contact with us first was Taryn. I'd have to double check that. But I remember the response being very immediate. So within 24 hours, they got back to us and like, an opportunity to go to Australia, absolutely will be involved. And it's Taryn's first time in Australia. He usually does events in South America or South Africa and through parts of Europe and a couple in America. But this is his first time being in Australia, which is just such a huge opportunity. We're so grateful to have the opportunity to just have him at our event. We're very excited, and it does seem at times like it's a bit unbelievable that we're on our third year and we've got someone so cool and so excited to be to it. He's such a sweetheart. He's just beyond thrilled to come, and he wants his gym, he wants his fans, and he's happy. That's all he wants.
It sounds like that's something that Australia's got in terms of culture. We've got gyms, we've got people, we've got the good vibes.
We've got the two things that he required, and he's stoked.
That's really nice. In that same platform, is there a space or is there opportunity for local or up-and-coming cosplayers who want to do something similar to what Taryn does, which is, go visit conventions around the world and, put them on a bit of a platform because they're building a name for themselves. Is that something that Pixel is also offering as well to, like, local cosplay stars as well? Is that something that you guys have opened up?
It's something that we're dabbling in at the moment. So we have a content creator program which expands beyond people that make cosplay online or in person. So we have it used to be called Twitch Pals, and we realized that was very exclusionary from people that don't use Twitch. Now they're called Pixel Pals, which is far better because it's got alliteration in it. So these are content creators from around Perth, and we've got a group of VTubers, we've got a group of cosplayers, we've got a group of Twitch streamers, YouTube content creators, and a various other bunch of people that are coming together that make content online that we can then highlight to the people of Perth. So we've got a couple of cosplayers, and they're not necessarily people with lots of clout within the community, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way towards those cosplayers, but they are up-and-coming cosplayers that we want to be able to give them a bigger platform to say, hey, check out this content I'm making online. I'm posting on TikTok every day. I make really cool stuff. This is their opportunity to then broadcast it out to a larger audience, which is, one of our gifts back to the community that we're able to give.
Yeah, that sounds like a really cool idea. You've been to DreamHack, like you mentioned. You've seen what PAX is all about. Have you kind of taken some of those ideas and what they've done in terms of like they had a creator lounge at DreamHack? I know they've got like that Twitch partner, some weird booth I think they had for
The streaming
the
booth,
streaming
or
booth,
yeah,
and just like a place for creators of that kind to meet and collaborate and interact. Is that similar to the kind of program that you guys are putting forward at Pixel Pop as well?
very similar. So we we ask our content creators to create content for the show throughout the year. So we either have them doing streams on Twitch, they do a lot of collaborative things. We have a Discord dedicated to them where they can all meet, network, they do joint streams together to try and promote the show. They do panels on the day, they do meet and greets with their fans, things like that. And when I went to DreamHack, it was like shopping for Christmas, right? Like with a list being like, and a trolley being like, I'll have one of that, I'll have a podcast booth, I'll have one of this, and putting all these ideas and taking lots of photos
Yeah.
and bringing back to Perth and saying, we're not doing enough with our content creators. It's wonderful that we give them a nice pretty badge that has their name on it, but we are not utilizing them for their skills. We're criminally underutilizing them.
Yeah.
How can we showcase them more to not just their fans that are coming to meet them, however big their community is, but everyone that comes to Pixel Expo? And that's where things like streaming booths have come in. It's where things like podcasting booths have come in. It's where we're looking at dedicated rooms for people to learn how to stream, which is something we did last year, where people could actually see their setups. And parents, especially with their young kids that say, hey, I want to be a YouTube star like Mr. Beast, can actually come and talk to someone that does it.
Yeah.
And they can explain it's not as easy as, becoming Mr. Beast. This is all the ins and outs of it, and get some really quality information from a real human being.
Yeah. That's a really cool initiative that you guys are putting forward as well. You might have seen as well, like you mentioned the podcast booth. That's definitely something that's JustBeCos jumped on when we did go to DreamHack, which was really cool.
Nice.
That was the first time that they ran that, and I think they themselves were kind of like, what are we going to do with this? We're gonna do podcasts somewhere. And
Yep.
I was talking with Smash, the anime convention in Sydney. It's going to be happening next month. They had a chat with me as well in a similar way, saying, Jeremy, do you have any ideas for how we can put a podcast booth at Smash? And I'm like, what do you want? It's like, well, we want to teach people how to do it, but we don't really have a strong understanding of it. It's like, well, I can help you run the thing, but they said, look, it's not something we've solidified, so it's not going to be this year, maybe next year. But for yourself, you said you've got streaming setups coming, you've got a place where YouTube creators can meet, potentially a podcast booth, and that all at Pixel Pop. Is that something that you're wanting to bring specifically to the Perth scene? Just kind of a place, a hub to help, I guess, get people who are interested in it and give them a bit of a, like you mentioned, an in-person teaching or an in-person kind of feel for what it's going to be like. Is that something that, is that something that you envisioned happening with under the realm of Pixel Pop and video games? Or do you think it's something that's kind of grown because that interest in streaming and making videos has just grown over the years and you want a place to facilitate that? Do you think it's just something that's come naturally?
Ooh, I think it's definitely something that's evolved, and one of the strengths that we have as an organization is being able to diversify and adapt our content as it grows. And I think it's where a lot of those big cons, and again, not to throw shade, but it's where they start to fall off because they're like, yeah, this is what we've always done. There's no need to change because it works. And our fans, and this goes for fans across Australia, aren't stupid people. They can see when people aren't, I guess, putting in the full effort, and I view it as having the privilege to do an event for the people of Australia or people of Perth. And I consider it a privilege that they come to our show. So I don't treat them like they're just another fan buying a ticket. Like I look at every dollar that they spend on their ticket and what they can get their content out of in order to adapt. And that's something that's been a long series of changes that have happened over a number of years, where we've gone from 2014 to be, we'll do anime and a few video games. Now it's like we're very strongly gaming oriented because we have two very great animation or anime conventions in Perth, so we're not trying to dabble too much in them because they do that excellently. We're going to bring the gaming side of things so people get that feel of, okay, these are very separate events, and Pixel's doing this one thing very well, so we don't tread on anyone's toes.
Well, you're definitely explaining in a way that makes me go like, wow, maybe I should just buy a ticket to Perth and check this out, because this seems pretty cool.
Look, if there's a year to come, this is the year.
This is the year. This is the year for travel, because it seems to be the year in which everything seems to be happening around Pixel Pop at this point in time.
Absolutely.
Now, because I know it's definitely game focused. We're going to get to that stage of doing guests, and we'll talk about that later. We've got some special announcements. I should have mentioned that at the start. I'm so sorry. We've got some cool special announcements coming later. But just for Pixel Pop as a whole, what kind of guests have you had in the past? Have they all been like gaming focused? Have you had voice actors? Have you had cosplayers? What kind of guests have you had that, if anything, gives people an idea of the kind of people that would like to come to events like these?
Yeah, for sure. So in our first year, we had a friend of ours, John Robertson, who some people might know from PAX. He runs the Dark Room. Lovely chap, originally from Perth. We went to our first ever local event to do some fundraising after the pandemic. I think it was HoshiCon. And we had a couple of things to sell, and getting feedback from the community and say, what would you like to see? And with the money that we raised at that, we were able to seriously then talk about, we could actually maybe get a guest for our first con. And that's where the idea of John came from, because he's a good friend of ours.
Yeah.
So John was our guest in our first year. He ran the Dark Room, but it was awesome. And then the second year, based on our feedback of people wanting 2 days and people wanting it to be bigger, we, as a result of us selling out in the first year of all of our tickets, we had to invest all of our capital into the venue, because the venue price went from like tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, wow.
So we had to make a big shift in doing that. And then from the success of last year, we were able to then be able to say, okay, now we have an actual guest budget, and we can get 4 guests for Pixel Expo this year as opposed to 1. So we're really excited, and I'm really excited to be able to announce 2 guests tonight.
Ooh, that's pretty exciting. Now, for anybody who is either listening as an aspiring cosplayer from within Australia, or if you're listening in from overseas, if you are wanting to come to Pixel Pop as a potential guest at some time in the future, what kind of things are you guys looking out for?
Look, anyone that has good standing in the community, but we don't necessarily have certain parameters. So we're looking for people that are interested in getting involved in any capacity. So if you've got a big social media following, wonderful, that's awesome. If you've got a really amazing build that you're proud of, and you've only got 500 followers on Instagram, but you're proud of that build and you want to show it off, contact us, get in touch with us, because we want to be able to support you and try and showcase the stuff that you're doing. So we have very fortunate have contacts all around Australia, all around the world, with voice actors that some of our boards are personal friends with, cosplayers as well from around the world as well. So we've got people that we can contact, but we're never going to shy away from anyone reaching out to us and say, I think I'd be a good guest, and then sell me your pitch. Tell me why you should be part of our show.
You guys are listening to that. You heard it from the man himself. Get good at marketing. Get good at writing emails. That's what's going to sell you as a cosplayer more than...
Write me a strongly worded email.
A very polite one, but strongly worded. Make sure it's going to leave an impact on him. Now, shifting the focus to... Let's go video games next. With video games, you've been to... Like I said, you've been to DreamHack. You've seen the esports. You've been to PAX. You've seen what they've got to offer just in terms of both the local indie game developers there, as well as the bigger companies... like Square Enix. I know they had a Final Fantasy booth once upon a time. Riot Games was there. Nintendo shows up. Sony was doing Sonic last time. Do you have similar kind of vendors at Pixel Pop as well, or what's can you expect to see?
That's actually highlights one of the biggest challenges of being in Perth. So the joys of saying unironically isolated city in Australia is a very serious statement to make from a vendor point of view, because the vendors that live and operate over east, getting the freight to Perth is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, right.
Like absurdly expensive. And then on top of that, you've also got to pay staff to come over, and then you've got to pay accommodation, and then you've got to pay all these overheads. It becomes really hard for those businesses to get involved. So we've had to do a lot of creative thinking to try and figure out a way to pitch to these bigger companies like your Sonys, your Microsofts, your Nintendos, even local developers like Cult of the Lamb and Massive Monster and all of these other businesses to say, this is what we're doing in Perth, and we have to be really on top of our statistics, our data, and our metrics to say, these are the cold hard facts. This is how much people are spending their average transaction value when they come to our show, when we can track that data. This is our gender spread. This is our age demographic. These are like the number of tickets bought per transaction, like things like that that really sell to those companies. Oh, there's actually something happening in Perth.
Yeah.
Because us saying, we're a mining state, we've got money, which not really a real thing, is wonderful, because a lot of people from Perth don't travel over east, and some people definitely do, but there's a huge market here in WA that never reaches any of that content over there. So we've had to come up with creative ways to have vendors at our show from over east that is low cost for them, but that can still have the same impact that they want to have to showcase off to the people in Perth.
I'm actually just really thinking about that, all of those associated costs, because even for myself, flying down to Sydney or Melbourne, I could do both of those for a cheaper price than it would be for me to go to Perth and back. So for someone like a vendor or someone from a gaming company from Japan, like Nintendo or Sony, whatever it needs to be, if you don't mind me asking, what are those creative kind of pitches that you guys have made to those to make it worth their while coming over to Perth?
We, I guess going back to our community, I like to refer to it as planting seeds. So when we planted these seeds within the community, going around to these university clubs, our content creators and all these other things, we have a massive army of volunteers that are dedicated to making our show work. At 150, I think we had last year, plus we have a team of 50 just within the committee itself. So a massive team. And within that becomes the opportunity to then allocate staff as volunteers to those booths for those content creators or those cosplayers or whoever has those skills to then work within a Sony booth or work within a Nintendo booth to help cross promote, but also give them an opportunity to network so they don't have to fly as many staff over. We look at things like overheads, like, okay, what can we do about a booth price for someone that's coming over east to reduce the amount of freight that they're paying? Can we group a bunch of traders together and pay them and then split the cost that way so we can actually bring everyone's stuff over together? It all arrives at the same time, but they're paying less because they're on a joint freight order. So it's little things like that we have to work really hard with in like communication with these companies to say, we can get the cost down for you, but it's just about proving that it is worthwhile for them to come here. And they can only experience that really when they get here.
It's an insane number of things to think about when you haven't really been in the game before, like me. I've never run a convention in the same capacity. I've run a university club event before. That's about the extent of it. But, when you have to think about, okay, cool, if we want things for people to do at this event, we need to get, these bigger names in, and that's only going to come with additional funding. But with that additional funding comes additional, costs. And in this case, it's going to be transport, it's going to be freight, it's going to be hotel accommodation, it's going to be guest fees, it's going to be just food and drink and toilets and whatever else you need to set up for an event.
Cleaning fees,
security, first
laying
aid,
carpet
down.
Aid.
So there's all these
little things.
These things that you don't even think about really until you're kind of in the midst of it. Have there been any times you guys have run an event and maybe halfway through the event you're like, oh shit, we forgot about XYZ, and you're just praying that nothing happens? Has something like that happened to you before?
Oh, absolutely. Our first event was exactly that the entire day, because I went into it very confident in that everyone knew exactly what was going to happen, but I'd done a very, very silly thing, which in that I knew everything that was going to happen, but nobody else knew what was going to happen.
Oh, no.
And we had, look, on the surface, I think it was fine because the feedback didn't really show that was an issue, but it was definitely something that was discussed after the event. And me in the moment was like, I don't understand what the big issue is. Of course, it's in the special drive that no one's heard about on the Google Share account, or it's, oh yeah, I put it behind this table in a very obscure spot. How do you not know where this critically important USB is that has all of the sponsor content on it? Just like little things like that now we have a very, very streamlined system, and that I'm not allowed to do those things anymore. But we have a really strong operations leader like Wade, who is able to delegate these things out. We have a general manager who now looks after all of those little things to make sure all those 1%ers get ticked off. And then on the day of the expo, I'm not allowed to do very much. I'm supposed to schmooze and talk to the people at the expo and do the opening ceremony. Those are like my key responsibilities, and to put out fires when the president needs to be there to put out a particular fire. But yeah, we have a really strong team for that on the day to stop that happening again in the future, because it was problematic.
Well, I'm glad. Let's just, what everything is, you learn from the things that you did wrong in the past, and we get stronger each year as it goes on. So I'm glad to hear about that. Now, community events. As a cosplayer, as you know, there are certain things that you get into as we grow up and we get older and we kind of want to venture into new things. Some of us are like yourself. We decide, hey, let's run a convention. Some of us, we like doing competitive cosplay. Some of us, like myself, somehow ended up as a social skills coach, and we kind of divided our time into that. But for people who like doing things on stage, maybe it's their first time going up on the catwalk, but are there also other things, like people like to do skits, people like to do dance performances, people like to do just presentations of sorts? Is that something that's available at Pixel Pop, either on the main stage or on a separate stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're one of the few expos in Australia, I'm pretty sure, that doesn't have a stage in our vendors hall. So we have no like loud content that's being broadcast across the pavilion, because it's basically a big airplane carrier.
Yeah.
So the sound is dreadful in there at the best of times. So we try to use the theater for all of our big performance acts. So we have, like we said, the cosplay competitions. We also have our Idols showcase. So we have Pixel Expo Idols Live, which is an hour-and-a-half block for local idols to come and dance and perform and sing and do things within their fandom. And we utilize a very, very high-tech, I suppose you could say, theater system to help promote that. So lights, sounds, fog machines. We had pyro in the first year, which again, very stressful. Looking at CO2 cannons this year. So really cool experiential events where people are like, oh, this isn't just people dancing on stage. This is a concert. This is something like really cool. And then outside of that, we have game developer showcases. So we have developers from Perth coming on stage and giving their 5-minute pitch and saying, this is the game that I'm working on. This is the funding I've gotten. This is 30 seconds or 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is of gameplay of our game. We've got big panels, and we've got big sponsored panels happening as well from some of our big sponsors like PLE and SAE Creative Media Institute, which will talk about how to get into game development or how to get into game design or how to get into animation. So there's a pretty wide spread of content that will happen over the weekend that's not just cosplay within the theater, but it I guess sort of celebrates all aspects of the gaming and animation and creative culture that's here in Perth.
That's really widespread, and that's really, really nice to hear. If you don't mind me asking, because again, I'm not from Perth, I don't really know what the area's like. Is there much of an industry, either in the games development side of things, whether that be video games, tabletop games, card games? Is there just much of an industry for gaming in Perth? Because to the best of my knowledge, a lot of that is focused in Melbourne, in Australia. Brisbane has a small industry. It's not great. It's kind of died off, unfortunately, in the last 10 years. Sydney, same thing. We go there for business, but if you want the creative side of things, it's in Melbourne. But does Perth have its own kind of hub or community or industry that you know of that kind of really seeks out conventions like Pixel Pop as a platform to, gain some traction?
Absolutely. I think it's through necessity more than anything else. With Perth being so far away, and I'll say that again and again, a very isolated city, we, through necessity, have to create our own opportunities here in Perth. Otherwise, we lose really good, valuable developers to Melbourne and to Sydney and to Brisbane and the other places. And that's awesome if that's where the opportunities are. But we have a really strong commitment, not just from Pixel, but we have the WA Games Industry Council based here in Perth. They had their launch party, I think, 2 weeks ago, and they had over 200 people from the gaming industry show up to their launch party. It was just a bar mixer.
Wow.
And like people of the local government were there. We had all kinds of people showing up to try and show their support for the game sector in WA, and it's booming at the moment. It's doing extremely well here in Perth.
Something I didn't know. Let's go to Perth and make something happen there if you're sick of Melbourne, everybody. So... On top of that as well, does Pixel Pop, just from the best of your knowledge, or have any plans to become something that goes to different cities as well, like what Supernova or Oz Comic Con does? Or do you kind of feel like we want to keep it within Perth as a local thing? Kind of like what Smash does or what PAX does. They only have one city which they focus on. Is that what Pixel Pop plans to do? Or do they think, maybe at some stage we could think about going to a different city to show other cities what we can do?
I think because 99.9% of our team are Perth locals, born and bred in Perth, doing an event in another city is extremely challenging for us. Again, being volunteers, we all work full-time jobs, have families, and I guess lives outside of that. Doing an event outside of Perth becomes very hard for us. Like, I can't go to a venue and plan it without going to a venue first.
Yeah.
It's like little things like that. So I don't see Pixel expand beyond Perth anytime soon, but our goal is to become like a PAX or like a Smash or like a DreamHack, those really big, amazing conventions that they have all around Australia. We want to be one of those destination spots. And that's one of my big goals, is for us to do a collaboration with all these events and do a like Australian tour of like, this is where you go each month. These are all the big cons, and I want Pixel to be part of that opportunity to say, you know, this is the, you know, animation pop culture touring events of local home run cons.
Yeah. Now you've picked it in September. Is that usually the time it's every year?
It changes every year based on venue availability. This year for Pixel, we didn't have a choice. It was the only date that had the space that we wanted available, and it's why we've already booked the dates for next year. We did that back in January of this year, so over almost 2 years in advance, because the PCEC, the convention center that we use, is getting booked out 2-3 years in advance now, because
wild.
people want to run their events, and people are turning out for Perth now. Perth seems to be becoming like a bit of a destination spot.
Is that like the only event spot, or is that like that's the event spot that you need for something of this capacity?
Yeah, it's the only one that works. We have the showgrounds, which again, if anyone that lives in Perth that's listening, the showgrounds isn't great. It doesn't have a lot of air conditioning, and it's a kind of like a big shed. And it's a bit tricky to get to. The train line only runs there if there's a good enough event for it to justify it being open, which is a really weird thing to have. And then we have the Perth Arena, which is more designed for tennis and big concerts and that sort of thing. And the RSC Arena, which we've looked into before, but it just doesn't have the space that we need for the volume of people that we have coming through our doors at the moment.
Yeah, right. Because that's the showground sounds exactly what it was like in Brisbane. Supernova used to be at the Arno Showground. Same thing. No aircon. Stinking hot when it was outside. Miserable when it was raining. So when it moved over to the convention centre, it was a blessing. But, you know, you saw it when it was like a DreamHack, where they actually used the tennis court areas to make a convention happen. What was your personal opinion of, you know, going to something that wasn't a dedicated convention centre, but it was a sports arena? What did you think of that?
I loved it. I thought it was such a great way of using that space. And I'm not saying that because one of my good friends works for ESL. It inspired me to sort of think, oh, you know what? It's kind of refreshing seeing a convention that's not in a square or a rectangle.
Yeah.
Where you walk your 3 meter by 3 meter aisles, you sort of push past everyone. It felt like there was lots of things to explore and do. And that's what we've tried to incorporate to our show this year. It's not just in the pavilions at the PCEC, it's upstairs in the foyers, it's in like certain aspects that are a little bit, I guess, trickier to get to. But when you know the venue as intimately as some of the people in Perth do, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it gives that people opportunity to travel through the convention and get that experience. Like, okay, I'm in the artist like district now. Okay, I'm going to go downstairs now. I'm in the gaming hall, and now I'm going to go into the theater. So I'm going to watch something and sit down. So it creates this narrative that people get to experience, as opposed to I'm in the door, I've looked at the shops, and now I'm going to leave the exit door.
Right. So rather than making it predictable, that's definitely
keep you on your toes.
A waffle, and we can just kind of explore it. We can actually explore it a little bit more in depth, I suppose. That's really nice. Now, one final thing before we get to some cool announcements. You did mention before something along the lines of, you know, gaming and PCs streaming, but also esports and stuff like that. Is that going to be a focus of an event at Pixel Pop, the esports section, with competitive gaming and any tournaments and stuff happening over there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So this year we're trying to invest a little bit more into our esports space. So we've got Rocket League tournaments, we've got some Tekken 8 tournaments planned, we've got a Smash Bros tournament. We're looking at doing Counter-Strike and League of Legends. It's not to the same level that DreamHack is doing, where they have a dedicated space with like high production values for it. It's something that we're dabbling in because the convention center, and again, anyone that lives in Perth knows this, the internet in there sucks. It's grim. So any kind of online gaming where there's lag involved, that's where it becomes like a really big red flag for us, because like I don't want to read a report that says, oh, I went and played the Rocket League tournament, but it was at, you know, the worst ping I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was unplayable. I had a miserable time. So we're not going to put something there just because, oh, it's cool to have Rocket League. Like, it has to work, and it has to work well. And again, not to be insulting to our fans, like, we want things to work for them. So that's all part of that experience.
That's really cool. I'm glad you're considering all different angles. It's not just, let's involve in, you know, let's keep this in here because that's the popular thing and people like it and everyone wants it. Like, it's genuinely, is this genuinely going to work first and foremost? Because if it doesn't, then we need to reconsider and put something else in that space, which is nice. One other thing I forgot before is you mentioned Hoshi as an event as well, because I believe that's a group that's based in Perth as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Hoshi. So Hoshi, they're if no one knows, I'm hopefully going to have a chat with those guys at some stage. They're around Australia at this point, hosting, anime game DJ rave nights, just all around the place, which is so much fun. And because they're based in Perth, do you guys have an event that's happening with Hoshi on the same weekend as Pixel Pop that kind of ties in with your event?
Ooh, that is a great question, and I will say watch this space.
Watch this space.
I'm not permitted to answer any questions yet.
That's fair.
But we have a very, very good relationship with Hoshi and Hoshi Events. So if you are a big fan of Anime Raves, and what they're doing is amazing, and I can't wait for HoshiCon next year when it comes back. Here in Perth, but definitely keep in mind. So if you're going to Smash's, I think Smash has got a Hoshi after party.
After party on the Saturday, and
I believe
Saturday.
so.
That's the one DJ Haru is doing, which is really cool. That's one of the guests they've got, which is sick. You're a cosplayer,
amazing.
DJ, it's sweet.
Just wearing all the hats. Yeah, if you're heading to any of those events, you get a taste for what they're capable of, and they've run really, really good events. So we're really excited to have such a great relationship with them.
Hell yeah. Now, just coming to that as well, we're getting to this part of the program, which it's like, all right, we've got some exciting announcements coming up, and as part of this, I should have said this at the start, build some hype for it, I'll include it in the description, don't you worry, Tim, I promise. But we've got a cool, just kind of tying into events, because we've got a couple of special guests to announce. As you know, Taran Cosplay from Italy's coming over. If you haven't seen him, I want to chuck his description below. Really good looking, muscular, very sweetheart man from Italy, beautiful accent. Come check him out. But we've also got two guests to be announced as well. I guess I'll go first, yeah? Because you've got the cool...
Yeah, if you want to...
Yeah.
Yep, sounds good.
Not to say that mine's not cool. This is also really cool. So, we've got two guest announcements today. One of them is a VTuber who a lot of you might know as Bao the Whale. Bao the Whale is a VTuber, and looking at this little description we pulled up just before we started our chat, Bao the Whale is a VTuber. She is currently the 4th most watched female Twitch streamer at the moment from the May statistics, just a little bit behind Iron Mouse and a few other streamers. They're a YouTuber, they're a singer, and they're coming to Pixel Expo to do a concert. So that's actually going to be included in the ticket price for Pixel Expo, like Tim mentioned. It's not just buy separate tickets, included in the ticket price. There's also meet and greet there. The only thing you have to do is just reserve a token for these events. But that's a really cool thing to have such a big name coming, to Pixel Expo. They're doing a concert as well, which is fascinating because it's not something.
So excited.
You think you could do, but that's awesome, and that's going to be in on the main stage as well.
Absolutely, yeah, in our big dedicated theater, so it'll have all the bells and whistles, lights and sounds. It's going to be sick. We're so excited.
Are you guys selling like pen lights and stuff as well as merch for it as well?
Well, we've looked into it. It's definitely on the table.
Hell yeah. That's so exciting. That's really cool to see. It's great that you guys get really cool. a piece of VTubing history really coming to Pixel Pop, which is great. So now, cool. Tim, you've got another announcement for us. Could you do the honors of to the next guest as well?
Absolutely. So we have our second digital guest, which is also a VTuber. So we're really pleased, and I'm very pleased to announce our partnership with VShojo, which is an American VTubing agency overseas. And they have worked together with us to bring Zentreya over to Pixel Expo this year for our show, which is extremely exciting for VShojo to have their first VTuber take part of an Australian expo. So Zentreya will also be attending a meet and greet. Like Jeremy said, it is all included in the ticket price. You just have to buy a ticket and then reserve a free token online just so we can manage lines. But yeah, we're really, really excited to have Zentreya and this partnership with VShojo. In Australia, it's huge. It's really exciting. We have a digital billboard. I was saying to Jeremy before we went on the air, we've got this big digital billboard, big, dirty, like massive billboard in the middle, in the heart of the Perth CBD, going up with this big picture of Zentreya and Bao going on it. And I looked at it, I was like, is the other people, the conservative, older people of Perth ready for this level of very specific VTuber content? And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, they're ready. And I sent it off and the marketing company approved it. So we're really excited to have a big, filthy anime inspired VTuber and pixel content billboard in the middle of the city, and to have Zen and Bao part of our show. We're so excited to have them.
Do you know if that billboard is going to be like motion, or is it just going to be like a still image, or?
It's a motion digital billboard.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's got moving parts to it. It's great.
Oh, this is what we want to see. So, Pixel Expo just sounds like it's got pretty much everything you could ever want at a convention. It's got cosplay, it's got games, it's got esports, it's got tabletop, it's got D&D, it's got VTubers, it's got cosplay guests from overseas, it's got competitions, it's probably a whole bunch of stuff that we probably didn't even get time to mention here as well with, like you mentioned, activities to do, things to see, all included in the ticket price. But Tim, could you just give us a bit of info about where we can find more info about the tickets, the dates, the prices of Pixel Expo? Could you just give us a bit of information about that?
Absolutely. So Pixel Expo's on the 28th and 29th of September at the Perth Convention Centre, right in the heart of the CBD. It's about a 20-ish minute drive from the airport, and there's a train line that goes directly there, which is awesome. We've got a number of hotels around if you're traveling from interstate or overseas that you can stay at, including ones that are on site at the venue, which is really cool. Makes cosplay and travel very, very easy. Tickets are already on sale now and selling very quickly. We did sell out of all of our tickets at our first show before the doors opened, which is very exciting and very stressful. And then last year we sold out of all of our Saturday tickets on the day. So a few people did miss out. I say quite a few people missed out when they rocked up. So please get your tickets nice and early. We've got our early bird tickets that end at the end of July, and the prices will go up a little bit from there. But at the moment, they are, I believe, $38 plus a small booking fee, and $50 for a single day, and $55 for a weekend pass plus a small booking fee. And we do have some VIP passes that are left over. They're limited to 50. We've got about half of those left. And they are, I believe, $150, but I'll have to double check the price on that. They come with a bunch of exclusive merch that you can't purchase anywhere else in the expo. They also come with a fast pass and guaranteed tokens for all of our guests and priority seating for all of our main events. So you get front row seating for every single event that we have at the show, as well as a fast pass that will get you in front of the line for every single event at the show. You just have to flash the pass, and all of the vendors know, and all of the activation spaces and tournament runners know that, yep, you've got the golden pass. Come on in. We'll got a seat for you already.
You sold us. You sold us, Tim. That's beautiful.
Come to Perth. We do all right. We do all right.
Sounds great. Nah, that's definitely a big draw, I think, just kind of seeing what Perth has to offer and kind of just seeing that there is such a unique event that happens, which is just gaining momentum every single year. It's definitely something that's really, really intriguing to check out, to say the least, because I definitely haven't been there before and been to Melbourne, Sydney a few times, but you know what, Perth, let's give it a go. That sounds really cool.
Perfect. We'll have a space at the podcasting booth for you.
Oh, you're very kind. Very kind. So, everybody who has listened into this podcast, thank you very much for listening in today. Thank you, Tim, for joining us and telling us all there is to know about Perth and Pixel Expo.
Very welcome.
Now, for anyone who wants those details and wants it in writing, I'll put it in the description. Don't worry, I got you, fam. Okay, so feel free to check it out. And just, Tim, for anyone who wants to find you guys online, Instagram, TikTok, website, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So following us on social media, Instagram at Pixel Expo Perth. We're also on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on TikTok. We're on LinkedIn if you want to get no content ever. Definitely don't follow us on LinkedIn because we never post anything on there, but we have one. But yeah, any place you find social media, and our website, www.pixelexpo.org.au, is the main hub for all of our information, including where you can get tickets and information on flights if you're traveling from overseas or over east.
Hell yeah. Again, I'll put that in the description so you're not going to miss any of it.
Love it.
But again, thank you very much, Tim, for joining us this evening. And you know exactly when this is going to go up. So it's only going to be a few months till the event. So get your place soon. Better than later. They're going to miss out, because I know there's a few people whining about Smash tickets already. And do you know what that to be for you for Pixel Expo? Waiting at the door saying I can't get in because I didn't bother to get a ticket in time. This is your warning. Exactly. Go get it.
Don't be that person. Don't be that person.
But dear. That's it. Thank you again very much for joining us, Tim. We'll catch you guys at Pixel Expo, and for anyone tuning in, thanks for listening in this far into our podcast. Thanks for joining us again, and we will see you again next week. I don't know what I'm doing next week, but I'll figure that out. Anyway, thanks very much for joining, guys. Thanks again, Tim. And Tim, let's say bye now.
See you later.
Bye.